Welcome to LavaCON. DITA is very versatile, but it's not prêt-à-porter. There are many choices to be made about how your DITA must be produced. In this session, Helen St. Denis from Stilo will talk about how to make those choices.
These days, we're all trying to make a silk purse out of the sow's ear of a global pandemic. The upshot of all of this is a quantity of imaginative ways to accomplish what we used to accomplish when we could all get together in one place. And this virtual LavaCon is a perfect example of that. Just as advances in medicine that come about as a result of war remain valuable during peacetime, there may be ideas that come about as a result of COVID that will enhance our lives even post-pandemic. So I'm hoping to learn a lot from this conference, not only from the presentations themselves, which are always useful, but from the entire experience. It's going to be great. Favorite things about the in-person LavaCon is the puppies that we have when we go to Portland. We have therapy dogs. So you may see some puppies in my presentation since we don't have the live ones. This slide is where you typically would see a picture of me. So I've included some pictures of my grand dogs instead. So my name is Helen St. Denis. I work for Stilo. I've been working there for almost 20 years. And I've been helping customers convert their content to DITA for over a decade now. We've done an awful lot of conversions. So one of the things that comes out of that is that we get a lot of questions about how to be ready for a conversion. We have questions that we like to ask the customers before we set up things for them. And they don't always know the answers because the questions hadn't occurred to them ahead of time. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the sort of things that you need to think about, the decisions that have to be made, whether it's you making them or somebody else, before you begin a conversion to DITA. So one of the big things that you need to think about is exactly what of your content needs to be converted. Are you going to convert it all at once, or are you going to convert just in time as you're ready to publish? So you need to think about this because this will impact your choice of conversion method for one thing, as well as whether you decide to do most of your cleanup, if there's any, before, during, or after conversion. So what do you need to convert? Is all of your documentation living documents that are still being edited and updated constantly? Or do you have a large volume, a large back catalog of legacy content that isn't touched, is just required to support your legacy products? If there's documentation that isn't actively being edited, do you actually need to convert it? Can you leave it where it is? Or if you do need to convert it, can you afford then to have it out of production for a little while it gets converted? You probably can. On the other hand, content that's constantly being edited and being updated, you don't want to take that out of production. You don't want a content freeze on that if you can help it. So in that case, it might be better to think of a just-in-time conversion. Now, another one of the issues, of course, is your legacy system about to go away? So if you've got all of this content, whether it's living or whether it's static, if it's all in one old system and that system is going to go away next week or next month, you need to get all of that content into the new system as quickly as possible. So that may mean you just need to get it done quickly, and you may in fact need to do most of your cleanup after it's in the new system. On the other hand, if you can take your time and migrate your content into your new system slowly as you need it, this gives you an opportunity then perhaps to clean your content as you're editing it, make sure that it fits the data model and so on, so that your conversion goes smoothly and gives you good quality data that you can publish right away. Many people prefer to do any cleanup that's required in the source format anyway, because they are more accustomed to it, so it seems a little bit easier. So you've decided, or somebody in your organization has decided, how much is going to be converted and how quickly it needs to be converted. Now, a lot of these things will depend, a lot of these decisions will depend on whether you are taking some legacy content or whether you've been acquired and have to migrate your content into an already existing DITA system, or whether you're just beginning your transition into DITA. If you're going into an already existing system, chances are most of these big decisions will have been made for you. You may be fortunate enough to have a nice document with your content architecture all laid out for you. And this is fantastic because it takes away a lot of the work, a lot of the decision making. It is important, though, to know what the decisions have been as you're steering your conversion process. So what's the DITA going to look like? A couple of big important questions here, and then we get into the smaller, more specific ones. So the first thing is, will your DITA have any specializations? So when I ask people that when we do our initial conversations, they don't always know what we mean when we say specializations. So DITA is the Darwin Information Typing Architecture, and the Darwin part of it comes because it's related to the adaptations of evolving entities. So DITA has a bunch of built-in elements, very well defined. It also has a mechanism for modifying those elements to your specific needs. So you may want certain additional elements in your task topics, let's say. There's a mechanism for adding those to the DITA DTD so that you have your own modified version of DITA. There's mechanisms for leaving elements out and so on, and the same for attributes. So that's what we mean by specialization. So it's good to know, obviously, if you are converting to a specialized version of DITA, we need to know what the specialization is. The second thing that's quite important to think about is, what is your reuse strategy? Most of the time, one of the reasons for moving your content to DITA is it gives you the ability to reuse content, which is very important for a number of reasons. It does save time and money. It does enable you to keep your content up to date and accurate more quickly and easily, get it out to market more quickly because of that. And it can save you a fortune if you translate, if you localize, because you only need to update and you only need to retranslate any given piece of content once, and it can be published lots of places. So as you prepare to move your content into DITA, it's a good idea to know what your reuse strategy is. What types of elements are you reusing? How are you going to do the reuse? Are you using keys? Are you using conrefs? Are you going to be using some profiling attributes that allow the topics to be reused as they are, just in different contexts? So it's a good idea to know what that strategy is. Again, hopefully, if you're lucky, you've got a document that spells all that out for you. But your conversion can definitely help with your reuse. It can pick out things like variables to become keys and so on. Can definitely put in the profiling attributes for conditional text and all of those sorts of things. Okay, so now we need to look at what the actual DITA is going to look like. So this gets a bit more specific. So first question we ask is about maps. So will you have a book map or a DITA map? Book maps came about because a lot of times people, although they were moving to topic-based authoring, they still needed to publish their documentation in a book-like format. So the book map was developed to allow for things like front matter and back matter and indexes and so on. So a lot of times people still want that book map. Otherwise, there's a DITA map where you can just put the content in the order that you like. Some people have approximated a book map by just using a DITA map with various output classes, for example. So there are choices to be made. Will you have submaps that are coming from your content and being included in a main map that encompasses all of it? And what will the structure of the map be? This is a question that we ask, and a lot of times people don't know the answer off the bat, but there are so many choices. So this is an example of what we typically do sort of as a default. We've got a book map, we've got a chapter which directly refers to the first topic in the map. So we've got a nav title, we've got link text and search title. And then we have topic refs inside that chapter. So that's one option. This is a more simple one. We've got a chapter that refers to the first topic. And then we have topic refs inside it, but we don't have any of the meta tags at all. A table of contents included in the front matter. We've got a chapter that refers to the first topic in the chapter, and then we have a map reference to a submap that contains all the child topics. So these are various different configurations which will have an impact on what your document looks like when it's published. Relationship tables. Relationship tables can be a very useful thing for reusing content, for multi-channel publishing and that sort of thing. Once again, people don't always know what a relationship table is or why they should use it. What it does is it allows you to manage your links independently of your content. So you won't have broken links when you reuse your content in a different context. So the topic that is linked to, if it exists in that publication, the link will be there. If it does not exist in that publication, the link will not appear. You will not end up with a broken link. So this is a very useful thing for building content in reusable ways. So there are again various configurations of rel tables, relationship tables. So the most simple, straightforward one that we kind of do by default is a 2-column source and target rel table. So the first column will have the source and the second column will have the target. So when you publish, the topic that is the source will contain a link to the topic that is the target. Then you can go for multiple columns. So we have an example where we've got multiple columns that are going to include column headings for concept, reference, task. So there will be 4 columns, and this is what they look like. And you can see we can put a collection type, so anything that's in the collection type will all link to each other, so they'll link both ways. So all of these attributes are available within the relationship table as well as in the map itself. So this is what this looks like when it's published. So you can put your prerequisite concepts in one spot, your references in another, and related tasks. This is just a way to organize it so that it's not just a big mishmash of links at the bottom of the page. So again, your conversion can help you produce these relationship tables. And honestly, if you can get the relationship tables to come out during conversion, you're going to save yourself a lot of trouble because creating these by hand after the fact can be a lot of work. So a lot of content will have related links at the bottom of the page. Those can very easily become rel table entries. Sometimes you'll need to extract the links from inline in the content of the document. That could be trickier, but it's also possible to extract the link from that and leave the link text in there just as plain text if need be. So the next thing is, what kind of topic types are we going to use? The standard ones, concept, task, reference. Most people are familiar with those and will know if they need to use those 3. Some people will say, no, our content is only concepts. Some will say it's all reference material, but most people have a mixture of concept, task, and reference. But what about troubleshooting topics? What about a glossary? Do you ever use a plain topic? Do you use a strict task or a general task? So what about troubleshooting? Troubleshooting is a very useful topic type. It's new. We've seen an awful lot of content that is troubleshooting content in intent, but a lot of the content that is being converted in no way meets the data model for the troubleshooting topic in DITA. So if you want your troubleshooting material to be in a troubleshooting topic when it's converted, if you are updating your content as you go, if you are doing some cleanup ahead of time, you might consider having a look at the troubleshooting that you have and seeing if you can format it in such a way that it fits the data model. A lot of the troubleshooting topics we see are very narrative in nature, which is not exactly what the DITA content model specifies. A glossary, sometimes we see those. Quite often what we'll see, though, is just a table with abbreviations or definitions. So we can turn that table into, for example, a definition list, or we could make each of those term and definition pairs into a glossary entry. Advantage to that, it's a little bit easier to reuse. It's certainly possible to reuse a definition list entry, but it is definitely easier to reuse a topic. So strict task or general task, I put that in there. Most people just will go with strict task, honestly. But a few times people will want a general task because its model is a little bit looser and they want to do things that they can't do in a strict task model. So that is something good to think about ahead of time, because although it is permitted in DITA to use both, it is considered best practice to choose one or the other. So other small things that we have to think about as we're converting. So file names and element IDs. As we're creating DITA topics, we create a file name and an element ID for that file or for other elements within the document as well. So what do we have to think about? Well, some CCMSs will have specific requirements for how they want the file name to be constructed. Some will need you to specify the topic type. Other times it's just a convention that has been decided by your organization. So as you're preparing to convert, you need to know what that is. Also, a logical, human-readable file name or element ID assists in findability. So some of the configurations that we typically use, we'll usually use the text of the topic title. We can lowercase it, we can camel case it, we can do all kinds of things like that. And we'll replace special characters and underscores with special characters and spaces with either underscores or hyphens. You can have either a .dita extension or .xml extension. We can add a prefix. So you could have a T underscore for a task, for example, which is a requirement for some CCMSs. We can also add the name of the whole document to the front of the file name. That way, if you have a lot of documents that have a topic called introduction, they can be distinguished, unless they're the same, in which case they should be reused. And so we can do the same sort of thing for the element IDs. We can use the content that's there to create an ID, and we can modify it according to your requirements so that you can find the appropriate element quite easily. What about your inline markup? So how much semantic markup do you need? For example, do you actually need a full syntax diagram, or is code block sufficient? Some of the things that are important here, some people are just happy if they've put it bold in the input, they are happy to have it marked bold coming out into DITA. And if you want it just to look a certain way, then there's nothing wrong with that. However, for cases where you are going to need to localize your content, it does become more important to distinguish particular types of markup. A menu cascade does not look the same in every locality. So those separators that we use, the greater than signs, are not standard everywhere. So that's one example. Some types of elements should not be translated. So it's important to know what that element is so we can leave it out of the translation, or just give it translate equals no attribute. Images. Where are you going to store them? Can they be found? Are they in a supported format? So these are all things that could be addressed in conversion. Storing the images, where are they going to be stored? Are they findable? Can you have everything all in one big repository of images and pick them out from there to go into individual content? Or does each document have to have its own store of images? Also, do your images really need to be updated at this point? Are some of these screenshots that are out of date? This might be a time to change them, especially if they are in a format that isn't going to be supported in your new output. Are they editable? It's possible now to create SVGs that can be published where you can edit these so they can be localized just as easily as regular text. So that's another consideration. Okay, some other miscellaneous things. Mixed content. So DITA allows, for example, in a list item, that you can just edit text in there directly. And you can also have paragraph tags and tables and so on right inside the list item. Now, that is perfectly acceptable according to DITA, but not every publication system, not every style sheet is happy with that. Some will say either you just have the C data or you just have the block content in that. So it's something to consider what is required for you. Do you have tables that need to become lists? So do you have a bunch of definitions or a parameter table that needs to become a DITA definition list or parameter list? Do you need particular attributes on certain elements? Tables are an example where there's lots of occasions where you need particular attributes. Do you want your column widths to be fixed or relative? That sort of thing. Your links, they need the scope and type specified. Do you need a short description element in every topic? So there's quite a lot of small things that need to be considered as you go through and get ready for a content conversion. So you don't necessarily need to know all the answers, but of course, the more you do know, it helps. No matter how well prepared you think you are, things change. And I think if there's something that we have learned from this pandemic, it's not to get too attached to any specific plan, because it's going to go away tomorrow and a new plan will take its place. So it is best, if you can, to build in some flexibility in your process. So thank you very much. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.